As you notice, we're not in Featherstone this week. We did get out alive, which was good. Phil, you've managed to sleep since then. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine. Some real heroes that needed sleep that were doing not only incredible things, but even in the immediate aftermath, were still making themselves available for interview and at various seen some astonishing people close up.
Kevin Sinfield, there are no more words we can say, I don't think, other than what a great achievement. What a person. I think, as I tweeted on Tuesday, not that we all can't run 101 miles. I'm not even sure Mr. Sinfield could again. Sir Kevin Sinfield could again. But I think the lesson we all take from that is we'd all like to think we would do something extraordinary to help a friend. And that's what he did and has done, and know that will continue to do in many various ways.
Yeah, I think hashtag be more Kev sums it up. If there was more Kev in the world will be a better place. And 24 hours that he transcends sport. The message that he sends out is bigger than even whether he's rugby league, rugby union, whether it was just fans of both of those codes and various clubs within them that supported him. It clearly was a lot wider and a lot bigger than that. And he tapped into something in the national psyche that we're missing at the moment and have done since the start of the coronavirus pandemic. And and that is the ability to see what's important in life, to help out a mate, to be selfless in the way you apply yourself. I don't think a knighthood's enough at the moment. I think it needs to be a sainthood now.
And I think, as I said last week when we were in Featherstone, with the way that they're handed out, I'm not sure it necessarily is a great a great thing to have attached to your name. I'm sure many people who have them deserve them. I'm not saying that, but there are many people who may have done less for society and more for individuals, say, who have received them in the recent past, and know that they've always, received them. The fact that he has the respect of the right thinking person on the streets is probably more important. And would he want to be? Would he care? I don't know. So.
No, I think the big irony would be that if he was given a knighthood, Rugby League is still not had one in its entire 126-year history, which is a scandal. And that would be very, very Rugby League. But
it is
Young, who is the Rob Burrow, planned Rob Burrow Centre at Seacroft Hospital, and I think when you put people of such drive and determination together with a fundraiser like Kevin, then I think it's going to happen, and it is astonishing. I don't think I've got the words to fully express what he went through, but at no point did he make it about him. Even in the depths of the despair of the pain he was going through, and let's be honest, as soon as he got over the halfway point, he'd never run that distance before, so he knew there were going to be black times, but at no point did he allow himself to be anything other than thinking about those around him, why he was doing it. Astonishing, absolutely astonishing, as were the cyclists and the other runner, it's endurance runner, but wanted to complete it for his mate Kevin Sinfield. And I think that was the feeling that went through it, that at 3:00 in the morning, when there are people still on the streets wanting to put money in a bucket, this is so much more than sport.
It is, and the fundraising continues. You can find the links online. An amazing achievement, a superb achievement, and one that will never, ever be forgotten. And then we go from that, and Ken Davey, what a man, pulls it out of the hat. Can't win an election, but gets a TV deal with Channel 4. And we're all excited because they're going to be there at the Kevin Sinfield Mega Stadium on February 12th against Warrington Wolves or whenever it is. I can't remember when. I know the fixtures are out, but I have no interest in when fixtures are. But it's the Rugby League on free-to-air television, the Super League. First time a top flight game has been on since, the olden days of regional ITV, which, no one mentions now because obviously everything began with Super League in 1996. But we're there. It's going to be on telly. People are going to watch it. It's going to be fascinating.
I think there's two things, actually. One is that we hoped this would happen. We knew that in the new TV deal with Sky, there was a window where 10 games were offered to a free-to-air broadcaster. And I think that the model for things like that is clearly the 100. There's now cooperation between a satellite broadcaster and a free-to-air because it can benefit both if it's done right. Rugby Union have done that as well. They've managed to get a little bit on various different platforms which feed each other. The exciting thing, I think, from a Channel 4 point of view is that they are renowned for innovation. I can remember coming across the NFL for the first time through Channel 4. It was a highlights program. It was, sexy. There was a rock soundtrack behind it. It was highlight driven. It was an hour. You look forward to the next hour. You could get to know the names of people, the names of teams. You didn't need to know the intricacies of the rules because it was a highlights program. But it took off and it captured people's imagination. It was exotic. They did the same with Italian football. Nobody would have thought that, seeing a league in Europe where you didn't really have a feel for the teams, you might have known some of the English players that were going over there, would take on a genuine cult status. Even Paralympics, Channel 4 has championed the coverage of Paralympics. They're very, very brave, but also in the way that they showed it. Has made it the spectacle that we now all can't wait to watch. They treated it seriously as a sport. So I think the most important thing is not necessarily that there is a free-to-air broadcaster for the first time in Super League, but actually who they've got. And I know they put out to independent production companies for what it's going to look like, but they have to prove to Channel 4 that they're going to bring something a little bit different. And I think the one thing that we do know about the sport is with the accessibility that we've got, with the fact that we have ready-made personalities. It's just that the rest of the world don't know who they are yet. You talk about the first game, Leeds and Warrington. There isn't really a better game that weekend. We might be having a rerun of the grand final, but actually Darryl Powell's first game in charge of Warrington, that's something that a lot of people, I think, there's a narrative there. We'll want to see how that pans out. He's doing it at a ground where he started his coaching career. Blake Austin could well be making his debut for Leeds against the Warrington team he's just left. There's huge stories there. And if they've got a production company that can tell those stories, that if they want to mic up the referee, they'll do that. The sport will allow them to do that. If they want to put a camera in the ball, whatever it might be, they'll be allowed to do it. And I think, again, the 12:30, we talked about it a lot, that when you play is quite important as well for generating an audience. And there are times in the sporting schedule that are underexploited. And 12:30 on a Saturday, just as your sporting weekend is really about to start, that could be a really good time to show games. They're going to show, on average, a match a month. I know they've got a 4 at the beginning and they've certainly got 2 at the end, but that means they've got to really have a magazine program. They've got to have a podcast. They've got to have other products that will tell the story while they haven't got the live games, give it context. And I don't think we should be looking at, again, presenters we've looked at before. I think this should be new. Maybe Adam Hill should front it. Maybe Helen Skelton should be involved. Maybe Jodie Cunningham should be one of the lead commentators. But what it gives the sport the chance to do is determine its own image in a modern setting. With the greatest respect to voices that perhaps we might have heard before or people of an era, they're not who they should be going for. I can see Premier doing that. That is appealing to a niche audience and a established market. Channel 4 could be anything. I was saying to my good lady the other day, we've started watching some of the BBC Two coverage, I think it is, of the NFL, where the two guys who are fronting it, Jason Bell and an ex-player whose name I can't remember, I'm watching for their interaction, for their excitement about when they talk about a game, you want to see the highlights of the next one. It's young, it's vibrant, it's different, it's a bit brash. It's not taking the sport too seriously, but giving you all the background information to make sense of the sport. That's what I want to see on Channel 4. And I think that is the outlet where we might get it.
What's interesting is most of my column for next month, I have written about various things about Channel 4.
Due this week. Just thought I put that.
Oh, it's nearly finished. It's nearly finished. But now I'm thinking I may have to not rewrite bits, but I think you're right. I think and we don't know where the highlight program is going to go yet, but I think that is the program where you can experiment a bit more. You go back to mentioning Channel 4 showing the NFL in the early 80s. It's hosted by Nicky Horn, who was a DJ, so still on the radio these days. So you can look for someone who is left of field because it's a highlight program. It's not as crucial as getting the person right. And they have to get the person right who fronts the live games, because as we saw with the 2011 World Athletics on Channel 4, the production company chose Otis Steely, who's a very good TV presenter, failed under the spotlight of doing live sport. It's a different thing. I've seen plenty of names suggested on social media in the last 7 days who would be awful choices just because they've got some connection to rugby league. It's not an easy job doing live sport on television. Even the best, I think Des Lyman at the World Cup in 1990 froze on one game. So it's not an easy job. You need a very safe pair of hands for that. But certainly the highlights package, whoever takes it on, is certainly something you can play with and have a bit more fun with. And hopefully, and that's what happens. I just hope they get the right people in the right positions, because if they don't, then the game could be great, but the first impression will not be. And that's the concern. But people need to remember, and as you've mentioned there before, Channel 4 tender these things out to production companies. They are a publisher. They are not they're not like ITV. Well, ITV and the BBC are more like that these days as well. But they are a publisher, not necessarily just a broadcaster. They don't make programs. They commission people to make them for them. So it's all up in the air. It's all going to be very interesting in how they do things differently, because it's different. It's difficult to do things differently, because a game of rugby league, a game of football, a game of rugby union, cricket, nothing's really changing how you show them, because they've always been the same way. So how you can do things around the match will be fascinating to see what those innovations are. Just not Mike and Ashton Sims.
They need a strong lead commentator, because clearly you're going to have two markets to service at the same time. One, an established one who wants somebody who is credible and clearly knows what they're talking about, and one who can also at the same time explain it to potential new audiences. I think we know somebody who could fulfill that role, but I think it's more the packaging around it that I'm really interested to see. And not wishing to go on too much about the 100, because I think that its second year is going to be very interesting. But by having music, by having a DJ, by having a presentational style that appealed to men, women, young and old, they did make cricket look and feel a little bit different. Now, that might have partly been the format, but as you say, the format didn't really change. It was still a bloke throws a ball and another guy hits it as hard as he can. That didn't change, but the feel around the game was that you were watching something a little bit different. And I think because of the accessibility of the sport, if they do want to hear a coach's team talk before his side go out, have your bleep machine ready, they will get that. If they do want to, I don't know, interview people whilst the game is in progress who are involved in the game, they will be about, somebody comes off and is substituted, and everybody buys into the fact that, while they're sat on the sideline, there is going to be a microphone thrust under their nose, or somebody is going to be mic'd up without affecting the way that they play, which the BBC have done a little bit of, but, again, could be interspersed with the game as it's going on, or however they do it. Whoever gets the contract will have to prove to Channel 4 that they have got ideas to present it in a different way to what we've seen up to now. And that's exciting, because if we get that right, it becomes less about the teams, less about the fixture, and more about creating something that people want to see, 10 times a year, which is fantastic. So, I think we said it would be difficult for a free to air to pull it off. I think the fact that, if we have a saving grace, we did sort of joke a little bit about it. We did say that Channel 4 coming to Leeds gives them a different remit, that they have to employ local production companies. They have to use people who is putting money back into the local economy. That's why they've moved their headquarters. So there was always a chance that something that is very important to the sport, to the region, the sport that is, might have got a slot. They're not frightened to put kabaddi on in the past, stuff like that. What we've got to do is to make sure that in this first year, we give them everything they need for the reason that they think it's going to be successful. In the second year, we take it to a different level. And when that second year finishes, they want to either get more involved in sport, or other broadcasters with more financial clout will say, having seen what you've done, we want a part of this. So it's very important that we make sure that we fulfil our part of the bargain, and don't just clap ourselves on the back and say, it's great that Channel 4 are covering us.
The clubs have to give Channel 4, the production company for Channel 4, as much access as they need, and more than they need. Give them everything. Because we will not get another chance at this. We have to make sure we are putting our best foot forward in every sense. I know it's only Channel 4 or whatever. It doesn't matter. This is the biggest opportunity in a long time. So we have to make sure everyone buys into it. If we don't, then we may as well not bother. And I would like to see, regardless of whether a broadcaster does pick up the highlights, I would like to see the sport do something in-house that they can stick on YouTube, they can stick on TikTok or whatever, make more use of more modern social media, because that's the way we're going to promote our stars. I'd like to see, where's our Rugby League representative on Steph's Packed Lunch every week? Chris Kamara's on there all the time. Where's Danica or whatever? Get him on there.
Well, but I think that's how Channel 4 will help enhance the profile of the sport. That what they'll do is, if we can give them the personalities, they will roll them out into other programs. Adam Hills is doing a great job on The Last Leg, because he had a model of Kevin Sinfield on his desk this week. If there's a Rugby League story, he'll mention it. Now, the others on the panel were a little bit disparaging, particularly David Mitchell. But I think we can change opinions. And I think you're right that it's getting it on Bake Off one week, or whatever it might be.
Bake a cake of Kevin Sinfield's head.
But the fact is, that's where they will see additional value. And I think we can provide them with it, because the one thing we know is we've got the stories. We just haven't been great at telling them. Clearly there will be league games in wheelchair rugby league. There'll be not all of the women's season that will be picked up on a week-to-week basis by Sky and the BBC. And it's great that they'll show internationals and grand semi-finals and grand finals and Challenge Cup finals. But there may even be that we can feed into the Channel 4 coverage other aspects of rugby league that fit the profile of what they're about. And the more that we can spread, get James Simpson on Steph's Packed Lunch, which is filmed clearly next door to where they'll be producing the Rugby League. All of that will enhance what we can do, and we can provide it. So let's hope that I think there's a feel around the chief executives and the owners of the clubs that they're coming out and saying this could be big. Adam Pearson said it. Gary Hetherington said it. Clearly, I think there is a feel that this is an opportunity that we cannot let slip. And if we're going to make the best of it, then we're going to have to give them over and above what they think they're going to get from us to enhance the product that we've got. And it's less about geography now. It's more about making it look different.
Exciting times. Is there any other news that's gone on in the last week? I think that's all the news. I know Leeds Rhinos women have signed more players. Really looking forward to the two-team women's Super League next year.
What I will say, it's really interesting the calibre of player that's signing in the Championship, because clearly Super League clubs, if they'd wanted to, could have signed Joey Leilua, they could have signed Nene MacDonald. But I think we're getting a quality of player in the Championship that perhaps we weren't expecting, in the light of the restricted finances and coronavirus. So I suspect that, again, Premier will be rubbing their hands with glee that on a Monday night they'll be getting some superstars that they can promote as well, which is great. And I don't think we've seen the end of that yet, because Featherstone signing Leilua has probably prompted Lee to go out and sign MacDonald, and Bradford might be the next that are going to announce somebody that is unexpected, and they don't all have to be from overseas, but that's shaping up to be a really interesting year as well. As we go into the sort of the quieter Christmas period, more fans of more clubs have actually got things to talk about. We'll talk to somebody who's written a book about Hull KR, about why he's so optimistic at the moment. Even a further author who we'll speak to has written a book about Wigan. He's again looking at this season and saying, I think we can be something. I don't know whether he's right or not. Not all the fans of all the clubs are going to be satisfied with how their teams start the season, but there is I don't know if it's safe to say there's a feeling of optimism, but you asked at our fans forum at Featherstone last week, rate the sport between 2 and 9 in deference to the great Brian McDermott at Featherstone these days.
Well, they all love him in Featherstone. They're erecting a statue as we speak.
Last Monday was probably a 5. I think we may have sneaked up to a 6 on some of the things that happened this week.
Was it 6.3? The maths teacher.
Yeah, the mathematician 6.3.
Carl Vorderman gets a mention in the new column. It goes off on a tangent. We'll see if that remains in. The December issue is all about tangents. The best line in the current column was not written by me, but there you go. So the plans for the next few weeks, I'm hoping to get some League One guests on soon. What I need to do, I've not asked him this yet, but you've mentioned it a couple of times. You mentioned it later. We need to do a reassessment of the 2000 World Cup. And I know you spent a lot of time with Mr. Doidge on that one. So we'll get him on, because he'll come back on.
There were some terrible moments, but within it were some absolute nuggets of development gold and some really good games that just got wiped out because everybody said it was crap.
So we need to reassess the 2000 World Cup. That's what we'll do. We've got our end of year review thing, which I don't know how we're going to do. Danica's going to come in and talk to us about her career, because we've never spoken to her about that yet. It's always been about rugby and stuff, but we want to talk to her about her and all the other stuff in the build of Christmas. And then the new year will be here, and it'll be back.
Well, we've been asked to do another fans forum in Hunslet. So hopefully second week in January, perhaps on a Tuesday night, we may well go live again. And I think that one, unlike the library one, which was really to send round the libraries, this one is going to be more interactive with an audience. So as soon as we get details for that, we'll let people know, and they can bring their rotten fruit.
I used the rugby union calculator, and there were hundreds of people in Featherstone last week. I mean, they may not have been actually in the library, but they were there.
I saw a lot of cardboard cutouts, but they were there.
They were there from Toronto, I suppose they were.
It was to test the libraries for the World Cup coming up, and so far the feedback we've had is that it went okay. People
who listen to the podcast enjoyed it. We will, if you want us to come to your local club, tell them to get in touch with us, and we're happy to turn up and bring our unique brand of whatever this is to your venue. So here's what's coming up. Right, got 3 guests now, so this is going to be a mega long podcast, but it doesn't matter, because I'm going to put timestamps on so you can decide where you want to listen to or not. We've got first. will be. Let me get the names right, because otherwise I'll get it all wrong. And this is, I'm supposed to be a professional now, and like maybe someone from Channel 4 will be watching this and thinking, he's the man. No, I'm not one of those people who's going to tweet Channel 4 production company saying get him on. No, Daniel Barker-Gray is on first, talking about Broken Time, which is his history of rugby league up until the year 2000. So not 1996, which is when it all changed, of course. Dan Crowther is a Hull KR fan who's written a book about Hull KR, which serendipitously has fallen into a season where they were successful. That's called the Robbing Things again. And finally, nothing to do with rugby league, but I like him. Ben Baker's on, talking about his book, Ben Baker's Christmas Box, which is about Christmas TV. Because the idea is books you might want to buy people for Christmas, because books apparently are a good thing. They're full of words, and you might learn something. And Phil's got a shot full of them, so got to do something. So we'll be back at some point in the future, at some point next week when I've arranged things. I've had the booster today, so I'm expecting to just. I've not collapsed yet. I've not fallen apart, which reminds me. I tweeted this last week, and I tweeted it again yesterday. When are people in rugby league going to learn?
I know what you're going to say.
I especially people from a club where someone was heavily sanctioned by the RFL, and you're still tweeting things. I don't get. I don't get it, Phil. I don't get it. I have no common sense, but I'm quite good at editing myself, which is surprising. But then, let's move on. Right. Here's a sting. Here's some books. Enjoy the rest of the program. We'll see you again soon. This has to be pointed out. Is that the famous terrible Wigan shirt, or is that the one the year after?
This is the one the year after. This is the one we wore in the first grand final.
So it's still got a terrible badge on, but not the Warriors.
Yeah, it's not the greatest, but like you say, it's not the worst.
See, people moan about these rebrandings these days, but that is a terrible badge. That is a terrible badge.
Yeah. I didn't know what was wrong with the old one, to be totally honest with you, but I don't get paid to make them decisions.
This is how these things start. Daniel Barker-Gray, you are the author of a new book called Broken Time. I saw you holding it up a minute ago. Hold it up to the camera. Go on, show the people.
Yeah. There we go. I'll hold it far enough away so that they don't see how terribly pixelated the picture is on the front, which is beyond my control. And if anyone does end up behind it, I do apologise.
I was at that game. I'm assuming you were, Phil, because I was there with school, because I'm obviously very young. And I was sat at the opposite end. And would you believe it? I was cheering Leeds that day, because obviously being from Wakefield, we don't like Lancashire. But now, obviously, times have changed, and I would have been supporting Wigan. But never mind that. Martin Offiah's try, a seminal moment in the history of rugby league, and you've pretty much written a series of essays on various parts of rugby league history, and this is your book. That's my summation of it anyway. You sum it up better than I can.
It was basically something to keep me sane during whilst working throughout the entire pandemic, to be brutally honest with you, more than anything. But like you say, collection of essays really sort of about various points in the game's history. A lot of stuff obviously has been done to death, which is why I don't go, despite the title, I don't go sort of in depth into sort of like the origins of the game. But I do talk about the first championship season, which obviously we should talk about, but also sort of things such as like the game's history in London, France, Wales, and the interestingly enough to some people perhaps, the BBC Two Floodlit Trophy.
And you've mentioned
not been chronicled enough.
No, what hasn't been chronicled enough, and you've mentioned it, and I am obsessed with it, because I've taken a photo of it while we were at Warrington for the Women's Cup final in 20, whatever it was now, is the ITV version from 1955, which is the most ridiculous tournament ever, which was not broadcast in the North. And And Warrington won it because 1955 was their year, of course. But
of course.
And no one knows anything about the tournament because it was all played in London. The programs for it cost a fortune on eBay because I was trying to buy them, but it's mentioned in there, which it's nice. We need more obscure bits of history, and as you say, I think a lot of people tried to start things during the pandemic, be it podcasts or books. At least you've got something, a physical thing to show that you actually did do something during the pandemic, rather than 95% of us who haven't got anything to show for it.
Yeah, that's like I say, because I work in the adult social care sector, so obviously it involved a lot of long days and, a lot of difficult days. So, like I said, it was just something to keep me occupied on my days off more than anything. But I was quite proud of myself for actually finishing it, because this is probably about the 7th or 8th book on Rugby League I have started and never finished. So,
is it safe to say that from the research that you've done, there's nothing new in Rugby League, that we get excited about changes in structure and potential white knights coming over the horizon and expanding to new territories, and actually putting something like this down to paper shows you that it's nothing we haven't already done before?
Yeah, it does seem that there is a sort of lot of rinse and repeat throughout the game's history. We stand now. It seems that we've been saying it every year for the past sort of 5 years, but we now stand at a sort of a bit of a crossroads in the game. We've got the brilliance of the Channel 4 deal coming in, which is fantastic for the game, and hopefully now we'll start to make household names of the players again. But then we're still in the dark about how the game is actually going to look. Are we going to continue with the structure we're in now? Are we going to go to the two leagues of 10, which has been heavily mooted? And see, again, it seems like Rugby League has been for a number of years a game sort of trying to reinvent the wheel somewhat.
And in terms of what you found out, did anything surprise you? Were you looking for some fact or nugget that historians do that nobody's discovered before?
I was trying to, and as Richard mentioned, obviously I didn't really know too much about the ITV's attempt at a floodlight Rugby League competition, which was quite interesting to find out. I watched so many sort of videos throughout the research process, and finding out that I think the biggest takeaway I managed to get that I tried to impress people with, and no one seemed to care, is the fact that Richard Madeley used to present Rugby League highlights on Granada. But yeah,
and Clive Tildesley.
And Clive Tildesley, yeah, the great Clive Tildesley, yeah. I didn't grow up in the Granada region, sadly. I grew up in the Yorkshire TV region because bizarrely that's what we have here in Cleethorpes. But it's which has never really shown much interest in Rugby League, certainly in my lifetime. But yes, it was difficult to try and find stuff that hadn't already been written about. But I think that's part of the research process of anything, really, isn't it?
Too young to remember the glory days of Scrumdown on a Sunday night at, in the traditional now Rugby League 11:30 at night after the news and after whatever else has been put on there. Didn't they show the Bradford Northern, the famous fog game on there, Phil?
They probably would have done, but the thing is, we weren't used to any coverage in those days, so we were more than happy to wait till 11:30 to see anything. It's not like today where there's instant access to all forms of try highlights or live games. No, it was different. It was different in those days.
How does a Wigan fan end up in Cleethorpes anyway? What's going on there?
My dad was from Wigan. My mum's from Grimsby. They met while my mum was at uni in Manchester in the mid-80s. Then I come along and you sort of have it indoctrinated into you. Like most kids around here, I also support Man United, so make of that what you will. But yeah, I had Wigan sort of drummed into me from an early age.
It's better than Grimsby Town, I guess. And, famously, the most famous Yorkshire sports person of all, Sir Geoffrey Boycott, he's a Manchester United fan, which he's beyond the pale.
I think that stems from perhaps one or two drinking sessions with George Best and Sir Bobby Charlton, perhaps.
I'm not sure that bears thinking. I can't imagine George Best and Jeffrey Boycott getting on. But then again, Jeffrey's.
I bet I know who bought the drinks. It wasn't the Yorkshireman.
No, definitely not.
We mentioned Wigan. Obviously, there's part of the book about their rise and dominance in the 80s and 90s. I guess that was a fun part to research, reliving the glory days, if you will.
Yeah, most definitely. Going back and reading about the great players, Ellery, the imports, Brett Kenny, John Ferguson. My personal, despite the fact he's a little bit before my time, I'll go into conversation with anybody at great length and tell you how much I admire Dean Bell. It's just great to be able to, talk about the greatest time. I don't think it's a particularly grandiose term when I say that the Challenge Cup unbeaten run is possibly one of the best unbeaten streaks in British sport, not just rugby league, but in sport in general in this country.
I can't think of anything that would match that in terms of longevity, because it was just a ridiculously long amount of time. But at least
I think probably the only thing that I could attribute it to, and a mate of mine said this, we attribute it to the Undertaker's streak at WrestleMania.
Not all the Harlem Globetrotters, but I think two of those three are not, perhaps not on the level. I don't know.
Yeah.
In terms of people who inspired you writing-wise, I mean, clearly there's been some wonderful histories of the sport written. Who's your source of reference?
Well, I'm a big listener. If I could just plug another podcast for a moment, I'm a big fan of Tony Collins' podcast, Rugby Reloaded. Also, I've got it here. This was one of the books that I used for great research, and Richard's other book, 100 Days that Shook Rugby League. But to be honest with you, it was just something that I've been interested in writing about a different variety of topics for a number of years now, and it's just sort of something that just came up off my own back. But no, anybody that has an interest in rugby league is automatically, a source of inspiration for me, because without wishing to make it sound like we're a bit of a cult, there's not that many of us.
I'm intrigued. As you say, you started 7 or 8 books. What were those books about? Because I've started many things and never got around to finishing them. What have you tried to write about? They've just thought, no, I can't be bothered anymore.
Well, one was about sort of like the history of the Ashes in rugby league, and it's just been sort of like lots of different bits. At one point, I did start thinking about writing a book about Wigan's great dominance, but there's already a book about that I don't think that does more justice to the topic than I think I ever could. Without wishing to make anyone feel particularly old or anything, you have to take into account I was 5 when the Super League years started, so to talk about a topic like that would be it would involve a heavy amount of research and, again, going over stuff that's probably already been said. But yeah, just a number of different things to do with rugby league. I wondered if I could get a book out of the one professional rugby league game that took place at Blundell Park in, I believe, 1981. But I don't think I can get much out of that.
I mean, there is a book based on one game, but does happen to be probably the most famous game ever in 1968, which you don't like to mention. But I don't know. I guess games played at obscure stadia. Maybe there's something there. Hull KR played a game against, was it Cardiff at Nottingham? Because I've got the programme somewhere. Yeah. Games played, that might be a random thing to write about one day, but I like the idea that you've started, you've given up, but perseverance means you've actually got this book published. How proud are you that you've been able to do that?
Oh, immensely. It's something that you never think you could perhaps do. To have a tangible book with your name on it as the author. I'm never going to play rugby league at any sort of level. So to me, that's like, stepping out at Old Trafford for the grand final or scoring at Wembley in the Challenge Cup final. It's as big a thrill as you can get, really.
What about things like design and editing and print and all that kind of thing? Was that all new to you as well, or did you have to take advice, or is it relatively easy in this world of people out there that can help you with that kind of thing?
I found it quite easy because obviously the first thing I did was obviously write it, and then because I've done it through the company who shall not be named for not paying the taxes, that their self-publishing mechanism, so to speak, has a guideline system put in place that helps you out. And yeah, designing the cover and stuff, it's made quite simple for you, which is good for someone like me who's not particularly well versed in such a topic.
So now you've written one, are you going to do another? And will it be Rugby League? Will it be something else?
I did get asked this the other day by a mate of mine on Facebook. He did ask, why did I go only to the year 2000? And I said, well, maybe there's, we've got 21 years worth of stuff to talk about now. I know I touch a little bit, sort of like the chapter that's sort of like a potted history of the grand final. I talk about last year's grand final, which still sticks in my crawl, to be honest with you. But I talk about that. I talk about the postponement of the World Cup till next year. Sorry, but no, there's plenty more I can talk about in the past 20 years. So there might be a second one.
And if not Rugby League, I know one of your other passions is one I share as well, which Phil will not want to understand because he's got far more important things to do in his life than play computer games, which is the various incarnations of Championship Manager and Football Manager. You're not going to do one of those semi-autobiographical stories of your route through management from wherever to wherever, eventually winning the World Cup with England.
Well, I don't know if I could do justice to that being in a written sense, which is why I do it on YouTube. But no, I've read a couple of those of books like that, and it is something that I did think about at one stage. But it's making it unique, isn't it?
And I guess the problem is there's no Rugby League. I know there are Rugby League equivalents, but they're not quite the same. They're not quite as they don't quite grab you as much as Football Manager sadly does. It's like a drug, Phil. You have to believe it's like biscuits. It's like biscuits.
Well, now I'm with you.
But no, I mean, I fell down a bit of a wormhole during a night shift at work last year and ended up watching you play Rugby Boss and Rugby Coach on YouTube. And I've been trying my hardest to try and download them. But for some reason, it's not letting me because I thought that'd be some good fun to do. But maybe it's a gap in the market for nowadays. Who knows?
It's a strange world. It's a strange world. It takes all sorts, Phil.
So, who would you say your book is aimed at? Because, as you say, it's more a series of interconnected essays rather than longer chapters. Do you think there's a market maybe for younger people who want to get a taste of the history of the sport rather than sort of wade into, one of Professor Collins' lengthy tomes?
Yeah, most definitely. At the end of the day, it's sort of aimed at everybody. It's if you're stuck on a train for an hour or so and you're interested in rugby league and it's something you can just flick through and it's not too heavy. It serves, I think, as an introductory package to people who have probably seen rugby league on the TV or in the papers or whatever and would like to learn a little bit more about the game's history. Or, like you say, young people who, again, have picked it up at school and perhaps would like to learn a bit more about the game. It's something for everyone, I think.
Sounds like ideal for sending to the head of sport of Channel 4.
Maybe.
I mean, we're going to talk about it later, Phil, but which people will hear before this bit because of editing. I mean, the Channel 4 deal, as you mentioned, it is a big deal for the sport, isn't it?
Oh yeah, most definitely. It's like I said before. This is rugby league's opportunity to make household names of the players. If you ask someone to name a rugby league player, there's a good chance they'll say Martin Offiah, and that's because at one point he was in everything, including Emmerdale. So and he's not laced a pair of boots up in 20 odd years, and now. What he's done is fantastic, and you can't take anything away from him. The most prevalent rugby league player at the minute is Kevin Sinfield, but again, hasn't played rugby league in 5 years or whatever, and now works for a rugby union club. This is rugby league's opportunity to get players, and I'm not saying getting them in on like I'm a celebrity, get me out of here, or Bake Off or anything like that. But this is rugby league's first real opportunity in a good number of years to put itself in the shop window and try and attract new supporters. And I really hope that Channel 4's coverage of it does it justice.
That's going to be the big acid test. What are you expecting from Wigan in 2022? Obviously, a change of coaching staff. Sean Wayne's back. Expectations always high, whoever's in charge.
A decent shirt.
And a good shirt.
Yeah. It is a really nice kit. I'm probably going to end up getting at least one of them. But there needs to be improvement from last season because, we were held trialless against the likes of Leeds and St Helens, which are the games you really want to be putting a lot of effort into. I'll be interested to see how Cade Cust sort of fits into the game. And I'm excited at the prospect of seeing Jay Field as well. Obviously, we only got glimpses of him last season after he got injured in round 1 against Lee. So I'm just hoping for a bit more improvement more than anything. St Helens are going to be difficult to stop. Catalans are going to come back stronger, especially since they've signed Dylan Napper as well, which is a good signing for them. And Leeds are going to be strong as well. So as long as we're in and about the top 5 towards the end of the season, sort of the upper ranks of the top 5, I think I'll be happy.
You didn't mention Warrington there, though.
Yeah, I was saying 150th year anniversary as well. So it's quite a landmark year for the Cherry and Whites. Have you been to the museum exhibition that they've just opened, or is it on your list of things to do? Apparently, it's got very, very good reviews. It's
on my to-do list. I joined the Wigan Rugby Heritage Society, so I've seen a lot of it on the Twitter recently. I've not been to it yet, but it's definitely on my to-do list for this year. Hopefully, combine it with going to a game as well. So, hopefully we can do something. I'd like to see us win the Challenge Cup in the 150th year.
At White Hart, well, what is it? No, it's the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. It's called, not White. Even though it is White Hart Lane, it's not called that. But...
Yeah, whatever they're going to call it this week.
So one of the things I was going to ask you about is you look at the 2000 World Cup, which I think at some point will be reevaluated because clearly a lot went wrong with it, and everybody focused on that. But there were some really important bits in there. What would be your take, having studied it again? Was it success or failure, or somewhere between the two?
I think it was somewhere in the middle. Probably the main reason that a lot of people see it as a failure is the fact that the host nation got absolutely walloped in the semi-final, and the fact that every game it seemed to be hammering it down with rain. But at the same time, there were a lot of positives to take from it. The elephant in the room is Wales against Australia. That in World Cup equivalents, that's the same as a small African nation going in at halftime against Brazil leading. Like you say, it will be reevaluated at some point. The main factors that you notice are the fact that it was a financial it recorded a financial loss, and England didn't play very well, and it seemed to be that they were playing was almost in front of empty stadium. I was actually watching, just for a bit of background noise, I was watching the Australia versus Samoa quarter-final game at Watford, and all you can see is like swathes of empty seats. I think it was a case of it was trying to run before it walked. 5 years previously, we'd had a 10-team World Cup, which for the most part had been played in the, and I'm going to use the term that I hate, heartlands. And I appreciate the idea behind the 2000 World Cup. I think it was just a little bit too early.
I think we'll reevaluate the fact that it was actually quite bold in some of the venues it went to, and had there been a development plan on the back of it, particularly Ireland would have been a success. I thought the quarter-final against England was one of the games of the tournament, but also people forget that the final was an absolutely outstanding game of rugby league, and for 65 minutes could have gone either way. But the reason it didn't was because the Aussies that won it were among the best players we'd seen in the modern era. But no, I think it's great that you focus on that, because too many people just write a line saying it was a financial disaster and nearly sent the game bankrupt. But it was a little bit more than that.
Yeah, most definitely.
We've got one of the great interviews with Hazim El Masri of Lebanon as well, which was something to be cherished.
Most definitely, and. That's another thing that sort of I wanted to sort of touch upon in the book, is that rugby league has never been afraid to try and take a risk. It was the first game of either Oval Ball code to host a World Cup. That could have gone either way. Move into summer with Super League. Ultimately, it's probably benefited the game. Because there were so many clubs in danger of going to the wall, and you hear all these stories of going to Odsal in the winter, and fog rolling down the steps and frozen pitches left, right, and centre. So
that was in August.
That was in August, yeah. So yeah, rugby league has never been afraid to stand up for what it thinks. At the end of the day, that's kind of how the game came into existence. It took a stand and it said no against the establishment.
Daniel, we're running out of time, but thank you for joining us this evening. The book's called Broken Time. Exactly.
Yeah, how do people get hold of it? That's the main thing.
You can purchase it on Amazon. Just search for Broken Time. It's available both in physical form and on Kindle. Just want to say thanks for having me on. It's been great to be on the show. I listen every week, usually on my way to work. So, we're a bit different hearing myself this week, I think.
Well, should you wish a retail outlet, I may know of one.
Oh, good. Yes, and I will get you a copy in the post.
That's fine. I think you'll find a review of it in the December issue of a certain magazine as well.
Oh, very nice. Thank you.
And I've never been anti-Wigan. I've got some of my best friends were Wigan fans. So I wish you well in 2022, apart from obviously when you play Wakefield. And, hopefully we'll catch up with you at some point in the future.
Yeah, again, thanks for having me on, guys, and hopefully speak to you again soon.
2021, apparently, the year of the Robin. That's what Dan Crowther is going to tell us, because he is the author of a book. I've got a picture of it in front of me. The Robin Sings Again. The story of Hull Kingston Rovers 2021 season. Robins are back, Dan. You finished above Hull, the other Hull, the one you don't talk about. Tony Smith's great side. They play exciting rugby league. I think things are looking up.
Definitely, Richard. Well, thank you, first of all, for having me on. I must say it's a crying shame that Scully's not here, because I could have given him some stick with him being a black and white and all. But
hey,
well,
Dan,
we can't have it all.
You've only just learned how to use Zoom. Do you think Scully can use the internet? Come on now.
No, I think I've beat him on that one. But yes, the book, it is predominantly a bit based on last season. Now, I feel that it was a real watershed moment in our Hull Kingston Rovers' history, potentially. But I must say, before anything else, it was always the plan to write the book, because I was going into the season blind. I'm not Nostradamus, of course. I couldn't foresee what was about to happen. Of course, it ended up being a successful season, but my plan was always to write a novel on what was then the forthcoming season.
This is the. Oh, God, sorry, Phil.
No, I was going to say, why at this time? Because I think you would have got long odds at the start of 2021 that Hull KR would have a story to tell and it would end in the way that it did. Because clearly the COVID year before. They'd finished bottom. They'd tried a lot of young players, which was great. They'd played entertaining rugby, but to dedicate yourself to doing a book without knowing what the ending's going to be, there is a potential recipe for disaster there. There was one written on Castleford in the 2017 season. It had to end with victory in the grand final, and it didn't. And that, in a way, detracts from the book. How did you decide that this was going to be the year?
Well, it was my plan, Phil, to initially to write a decade of books. I mean, my love is based upon, of course, I'd love success. That's what we all want in sport. But my plan was always to document our club's history in the best possible way that I can, be it winning or losing. So that was always the plan. So it wasn't a love of the forthcoming season as it was then, like 2021. It was just always the plan. And as it happened, a lot happened there, especially off the field. So it was a memorable season. And yes, I don't think many people would have expected the club to have got as far as they did in the competition in the end.
If I remember rightly now, because obviously I'm not a Hull KR fan, so I can't remember everything that's happened, but at the start of the season, wasn't the club up for sale? There's a lot of...
that's right, Richard.
Not quite turmoil, but not necessarily the smoothest of sailing.
Well, I mean, I would have to argue that it could have been turmoil. I mean, obviously, since then, we've got the benefit of hindsight now. Hudgell is staying on, thankfully. But with the world being infested by the coronavirus at the time, who's going to want to buy a rugby league club? We all know, especially you two, how the sport is being run and how we're struggling as a game as it is, let alone attracting outside investment. So it was always a worry for us, because for as many fans as we got, and without bragging, we have got a lot of fans. Without Mr. Hudgell's investment, the club would be struggling. To put it like, they're very, very likely to be the case. Anyway, obviously we have the odd exception to the rule, Salford in recent years after their investments went away. But yes, it was very, very what could I say? Dangerous, I suppose, with Hudgell potentially leaving. It was a big point of consternation within the fan base, I must say.
Especially because he's obviously brought a lot of stability to the club. I'm going to assume, Dan, because the podcast listeners won't be able to see it, but you look young, so I'm going to assume that you don't remember the, even though it's fairly recent in my life, 97-ish, when the club was teetering on the edge. As both Hull clubs were in a lot of bother in the late 90s, but obviously under Neil Hudgell, the scene has been settled for a long time, and I guess it must have been different. You've had relegations and promotions, but the club's always been fairly steady in terms of the way it's been run.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I must say, when you did mention 1997 in particular, ironically, the year I was born, but also the year we almost went out of business as well. All of that is also covered in the book, because when I'm thinking of dedicating a lot of my time to rugby league literacy, I want to open myself up to other fans of other clubs who may just be interested in the tale of the underdog, if you will. So in my prologue to the book, I do talk in depth about the club's history, all the way from the foundations back in 1882. There's also some social history there with the city of Hull, because in the 1890s, talking about rugby league as a whole, there was the great schism between ourselves as a sport and obviously the RFU. But in Hull, there was somewhat of a schism, I guess, with ourselves and, Richard, you said yourself, I'm not going to refer to them by name, but that lot across the river. So there's all that covered. And I must say that our history is incredible in the sense that how we survived, because I'm not going to go on about it too much, but back in the 19th century, there was so many little clubs forming in the Hull district, and we broke out of the pack, although Hull FC had dominated since the year 1865. Oops, I mentioned the name, but Hull had dominated since 1865, and we broke out of the pack, and all that is in the book, all that history there, and how it was formed, how life was like back then in the 19th century, especially in Hull and the East Hull area, how it developed, and then onto the years and the successful years and the not so good years, and then ultimately how we got to that point in 2021 at the start of the book.
And of course, playing at the Boulevard, but we won't mention that either. the other thing that a great book needs is it needs characters.
Yes.
And in people like Tony Smith, Ryan Hall, Jordan Abdul this year, not just picking out names above any others, because it was a real team effort. Youngsters coming through like Mikey Lewis. You had a rich seam there.
Yes, absolutely. A good blend of experience and youth, Phil, I think. And it really does actually hark back a little bit to the days when Tony Smith was at Leeds Rhinos, when he won the grand final. Well, then obviously not comparing these successes because I can't, but there's some similarities there that can be drawn upon, definitely. There is a lot of good players coming through now at the club. You know, it's not just Mikey Lewis, who, at first, I mean, a lot of people have forgotten this because of how well Lewis has done, rightfully so, but he was in and out of the team, which I think you could attribute that to Tony Smith's management of him. But we've also got other good young players as well. Lewis Johnson is somebody that's gone under the radar. Matty Stoughton, a back rower, and so on. There's a lot of good players at the club right now, you know, that have got the best years ahead of them. So it is very exciting right now. And as for the cast of characters that you mentioned in terms of having importance to the book, as funny as it is, not just inside the Rugby League sphere, but also outside it. Carl Turner, who's an MP here, he was also a character in the book, in the sense that when our infamous Elite Academy decision happened, or I say ours, the RFL's Elite Academy decision had took place, Carl Turner was quite instrumental in speeding up that process, which led to the decision of the RFL handing us a temporary licence, which is still the case now. And I must say it's also a cloud that's still hanging over our head even as we speak. But yes, even characters outside of Rugby League, the likes of Turner, are all documented in the book as well, their contributions to the club.
I don't want to talk about the academies because I'll mention somebody I don't want to mention.
We've talked about as well the off-field change at Hull KR, which in some ways is indicative of where clubs need to go. I think it's safe to say borrowed a little bit from the Wolfpack experience, because Rovers were one of the few teams that got the chance to go out there and see it. But again, as a fan, have you noticed that whilst there was always a great raucous atmosphere when the game was on, that now it extends, you know, maybe an hour or two before and an hour after, and the game that was in Perpignan, the playoff game, you know, 1,200 people there watching the game on a big screen and having a beer, that hasn't happened before.
Absolutely, Phil. I must say I've sampled the Craven Street experience pretty much every time it's happened, and it is fantastic. I mean, with the situation at Craven Park is that we've got 3 stands and, well, 4 technically, but the one where Craven Street wasn't the best, to say the least. It was very much a byproduct of the Greyhound days. So I think we as a club, or the people in charge of the club, I think they've done something really well there, because it's not just what it is is that when you've got 3 stands, and in those stands, people don't always see one another. Like, even if they know one another, but they all congregate into that area. And like you say, Phil, with the beer, the concerts that they do, the entertainment, and just talking in general, it is genuinely fantastic. And I believe that the NFL was also a inspiration behind it, because they've got the tailgating tradition of drinking many hours before the games there. So that was also behind it, I believe, as well.
And then it's great to see a tradition. I know New Craven Park, it's not Old Craven Park or whatever, but it's good to see a traditional rugby league ground flourish, because obviously I populate one which has not flourished in recent years, but it's good to see obviously Headingley's improved, and on your own way that Craven Park is improving around you as we speak.
Absolutely. And I believe that the club have alleged to have plans to redevelop the East Stand as well as the West Stand. It's been spoken about even by the press, by the club's hierarchy. So I believe that is afoot as well, but we shall see. And I think that's a good idea as well, because when the club did move to Craven Park in 1989, the club was running out of money pretty much. Very much. I mean, they didn't even have 4 stands back then in 1989. It was very incomplete, just not quite finished, and the clubs really had to do it tough in that sense. But as the club progressed over the years, the ground's definitely gotten a lot better than what it was before. Not only the stands, but the pitch is magnificent compared to how it used to be as well. So yes, definitely. I think it's a good idea because you've either got the choice of doing what you can with the current ground or just moving to a new one. But the club have decided to stay where they are, and I think that's got to be commended in a sense.
And I'll say this about Wakefield and Castle, and I say about Wakefield before, and you've got this advantage as well. At least you have your own home and it is yours and you can do with it as you wish. It's, you know, for Wakefield and Castleford, it might be a millstone at times, but at least your destiny is kind of in your own hands and you can decide when you want to play. And that kind of thing is a bit of an advantage these days.
Yes, unlike some, maybe even across the river. But I must say, Richard, not to get in your good books, I am a stickler for Bellevue. I absolutely love that ground. It has that appeal. Definitely.
It's a working museum. It's like Beamish. That's what someone will say.
If you want to go and see where a 1963 film was shot in its almost pristine state from then, that's the place for you. I can remember, I think, one of the worst games of rugby league I've ever seen at New Craven Park, and possibly been the coldest I've ever been, a 2-0 win over York.
Was that a drop goal win? Was it 2 drop goals?
No,
or was it a goal kick?
It was 1 penalty.
One penalty. Yeah.
The wind was howling off the North Sea. It was before the stand had been built at the other end, so it just came straight through the stands, and it was winter rugby at its worst.
Wow, that's. I mean, the film you was referring to, was that the one with Richard Harris in it by any chance? It sounds familiar.
That's the one. That's the one.
Right. Yes. Excellent.
Worth a watch, but you will recognise Bellevue as you see it today. Apart the roof of the main stands of it.
I think Queen Victoria would have recognised Bellevue, wouldn't she?
She'd recognise the gents.
Yeah.
Well, she wouldn't have been able to use the ladies.
Possibly.
Obviously, you're coming up, as Phil mentioned, 2020 wasn't a great season. 2021 has been one of success. How do you capitalise on that in 2022?
I think that the club has to manage expectations, which is easier said than done. It's a big club. There's a lot of expectation, naturally. But when you do hit the heights in one season, you're expected to do it again. And that's going to be tough. But I think that they've got the side to do it. So in answering your question, I think that hitting the playoffs again has got to be the target for next season, definitely. You've got to build and build. You can't... I mean, I think if the club finished, for instance, just outside the playoffs next season, I think there would be some grumbling, but you've got to look at it, comparatively speaking, we've been so poor for the past 5 years. We were the first club to fall through the £1 million game trap dome. We got ourselves back, but since then it's still been rather poor on the whole. So I think you've got to be realistic, and I think targeting the playoffs next season is the goal that they will be looking for.
As you've mentioned it, that £1 million game.
Yes.
What was going through your mind? Because I was having to listen to the radio commentary because I was away from a TV and I was listening to Scully and Craig Murdoch. Obviously used to wear the red and white of Hull. It is red and white. It's not some kind of wacky shade. I've not got this wrong, have I? Like when I said Huns that wore green and orange, I can't get in trouble with.
No, you're correct.
And having watched the highlights, makes you think, why don't you just give away a penalty? What are you doing? Right? What was going through your mind at that moment? And you know, at least as we know now, there's a happy end to this story. It's not a sad ending.
Absolutely. Do something. That was what I was thinking. Just do something. And they didn't. And I'll tell you what, Richard, there was a game this year, and you're going to like this because we beat Castleford. And it was towards the end of the game. It was really fiercely contested between the two sides. And Corbin Sims, who was a pantomime villain with a Castleford fan, so you might even like him more now, he held down a Castleford player towards the back end of the game when they was on our line to potentially steal the game from us. And of course, he was sin-binned, and rightfully so, but it's that game management, that astuteness, and that's what they was severely lacking back in 2016. And as we saw, it cost us big time.
I think we'd rather be in Hull KR shoes than Salford shoes, though. Now that's the main thing.
Yes, sport really does change in such a short space of time.
I mean, I know in your epilogue you start to look forward to, is this sustainable? But clearly one thing that is always difficult when a team achieves well in 1 year is that coaches spend a lot of time in their off-season planning for how they're going to play you. And it's very rare that you can replicate a way that you've played 1 year and it be successful in a second year. How do you think that Rovers need to approach 2022? Because they got this reputation for being the entertainers. They love playing rugby. It's Tony Smith's philosophy is if you see it and it's there, go for it. And there's a particular Mikey Lewis try towards the end of last season that emphasised that more than anything else. But is that going to be enough?
What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a leaf from Phil Clark's book and I'm going to compare rugby league to football in the situations, as he often does it, Phil. I remember there was a game, I don't remember at the time, of course, because I'm only young, but in 1999, when Leeds United played Watford, there was a game where Leeds tore them apart. And Graham Taylor was interviewed after it, and he said, well, when you plan to prepare to play Leeds, you try and mark Pugh out the game and Hasselbank out the game. But the thing is, they've got that many weapons there that you can't do it all. And that's how good teams ultimately come on top, because they just got too much now. I see some similarities with Rovers in terms of the halves are strong now. And also the left edge, especially with Sean Kenny, Dowell and Ryan Hall, of course. Despite it ageing, in the present time, it is one of the deadliest left edges in the entire division. So we've got that. There's two there. I definitely think that the club has to strengthen in the forwards to match every single team. If we want to become a true superpower again, then we need to match teams in the forwards more. And I felt that we made progress last year in that sense, but it wasn't quite up there with not Wigan, sorry, the St Helens of the world. Sorry, Wigan fans. But yes.
Saints are the benchmark, aren't they? That everyone needs chasing down.
That was a bad mix-up there. I don't think Wigan fans would appreciate that one. But yes.
I mean, obviously, you want to be as successful as possible. One thing that strikes me from the outside of, Scully or Craig Murdoch would say that the bubble in rugby league in Hull is the rivalry between the two clubs. Is there too much emphasis put on that? You finished above them last year, but you've mentioned you want to be in the playoffs. Does it matter what happens with the other lot? Do people think about that too much more than success for your own side?
Definitely, and I think they do think of it too much, Richard. I think it happens on both ends as well. I've been coming out of games and I've heard, at least Hull got beat, and this is after we've been beat. You know what I mean? So I'm thinking to myself, well, who cares about what Hull FC are doing? We need to concentrate on ourselves. I mean, as for your other question about how the fortunes and how we feel about them, well, it depends on how bitter one is. If you want to see them crash and burn and go into liquidation, some definitely will. And some want both to do well and compete, but the general consensus is we always want to be above them if we both do well.
Which leads on to another question now that the fixtures are out. Clearly, are we playing the derby too often? I mean, it means everything to the people on both sides of the city. It's the neutral game that the rest of us want to just sit back in an armchair with a beer and watch two sides cream the hell out of each other. But if you do it too often, does it lose its edge even as a Rovers fan? Would you rather they weren't playing at Magic Weekend and pre-season and two league games, a potential cup tie, maybe a playoff at the end of the season? You could face each other for a quarter of the season effectively.
Yes, I think so, Richard. Sorry, Phil. I think they do play each other too many times. However, I did think to myself at one point, what if both teams were really at the top of the game again, like they were at the start of the 80s? Then it would be a real monumentous occasion almost every time, you'd like to feel. And then when you think back to the 80s again, there was playing so many games against one another, whether it be the League, the Challenge Cup, the Yorkshire Cup, the John Player, and nobody really seemed to complain then. And the gates many times were better than what they are now. So it's really a tough one to gauge, I feel, when we reflect upon history, which is the good yardstick to use, I feel, in these situations. So it is a tough one to gauge. But definitely in recent years, because I must hand it to them, that they've handed it to us. We've wanted to avoid them, and generally speaking, Hull derbies are tough games as well. So I must mention something, if I can, is that not only do we play Hull on Good Friday, but we also play Toulouse away on the following Monday, and that is absolutely outrageous. I think what the club's got to go through there.
Not moving back to why don't play on a Thursday night, the Hull derby? They've done that before. I'm sure I covered one on the radio a few years ago on a Thursday night. Yes,
I believe they have in the past. Yeah, and that would be a good idea in that situation. You could make it work because on that week there is actually Thursday fixtures. So that would be an idea. But no, it's not. There's no dice basically, and it's going to be a tough game.
Because it's on Sky, that's why.
Right, yes. And I think they've chosen other games, haven't they, on the Thursday to place them on Sky instead of us. And they've just kept tradition, the Good Friday Hull tradition. So
in terms of being realistic, which you mentioned, at what point last season did you think this one might be a bit special? Because you're chronicling it, you know, adding material after every week, and suddenly you're thinking we might make the playoffs, or we might get to a grand final, or maybe this is our year to win the Challenge Cup, which it wasn't. But you at what point did you think this has turned around? This could be exactly the right year to be penning the fortunes of the team?
Yes, Phil. There was one moment where I had goosebumps, literally, because. And it was, of course, when we beat Warrington. And I thought to myself, we are only one game away from Old Trafford. It was that real. After such a poor year in 2020 as well, to suddenly turn it around. Because I know you did say that we played good rugby, and that is true. But by the end of 2020, the performances were so disjointed and poor. And, that's why you wouldn't really expect us to get so far in the season. That's just been so. Yes, the moment was when we beat Warrington, for sure. But as for the playoffs, yes, it was a real topsy-turvy type affair with getting in the playoffs. It wasn't always a guarantee. But then once we got there, we played Warrington, and nobody really gave us a chance, including our own supporter base. And when we did beat them, it was a huge shock for the division. And that's when you go to Catalans, who have beaten you 3 times already. And there is that story, is there going to be a 4th time lucky or not? So, yes, there's always that where you start to wonder, this could be the ideal time to write the book. In terms of like marketing and the success of it, definitely.
So is the plan to write one every season then now? And how many more Robbins-based puns can you think of? That's the other thing.
I'm not even sure if I'm planning to base it on that name all the way through. I must thank Phil Kaplan himself, for suggesting that name for me as well, by the way, whilst we're on the air. So thank you, Phil, for that. But yes, I'm not sure about that. But in terms of writing the books, I'm planning to do it every year, yes, because it's like I said at the beginning, I want to document this club's history. And unfortunately, I feel from a club point of view, literacy is lacking game-wide, really, for clubs, individual clubs, let alone when they've not won anything like we haven't. But, just generally speaking. So I do want to cover it if I can. And that definitely is the plan, because I feel it's a historical resource for generations to come. Because if you go back, let's say, into the 1920s, which was ironically Rovers' second golden era prior to the one we all know, the 80s, there's no real social documentation, how it was going to the games. Aside from newspapers reports, there's no real descriptions of players and things like that. So it's very unique in that sense, I feel, what I've done.
And people can look back in 100 years' time and think what we were doing. And that's important.
Definitely.
You've gone through a rebrand. You're wearing the old gear there, but you've got an exciting new badge. I've just been onto the Super League media portal to download it so I can use it on our stuff for next season. Exciting new away kit. new home kit, which has divided opinion. How happy are you with the way the club is being pushed in that sense as a kind of exciting new branding?
I'm slowly getting accustomed to it. At first, I was unsure. I didn't dislike it. I didn't like it. And whether that's a good thing or not, I'm not sure. But I'm getting used to it. And I think a lot of people will. Like you say, Richard, divided opinion. I understand the club's reasons for doing it. And I believe that the Sky Sports also had something to do with it as well. And that's fair enough. They do back our game. I think it's important that the club felt comfortable enough. And I must not spoil the book or anything, but I must draw a comparison. I really appreciated how headstrong the club was with the decision. And again, sorry for the comparison with Leeds United, but I am a fan. But when they brought out that badge, we all know what badge it was, that disastrous one. Within around 6 hours, it was totally gone. They pulled the plug on it. So with Rovers, they had a similar reaction from some of the fans. Some of the fans actually felt that it was worse than Leeds United's attempts. I would disagree with that personally, but that's what some people felt. So they were definitely strong-minded to stick with it. And within hours, there was, I believe, 25 range of merchandise out there to purchase. So they was confident in the direction they were going in.
We had a cartoon cat for 20 years. I can't say that Hull KR's exciting new badge is rubbish. No, I quite like the new brand. It's very, very modern, and I guess that's the way that the club is looking at it. It's as you say, forward thinking, forward looking.
Absolutely, very digital.
Absolutely, Phil. I believe
for a new market.
Yes, absolutely. Our head of media and communications described our old badge as analog in a digital world. And that's so true because the world is changing now. It is so digital. I mean, we're all on a Zoom call tonight, and that's just how the world has changed. And the world's changed a lot since 1948 when that badge was first introduced. So I think it's an important move. It's not going to be popular, but it might bear fruit in years to come, definitely.
As we run out of time, have you gone analog in a digital world, Phil? You seem to have. I think Phil's frozen.
Have I?
Oh no, you're back. You're back. Have you got any last thoughts on?
I'm still here. No, I was just going to say, for all the talk of an analog world, I just hope that the printed word stands the test of time. Clearly, you must do as well because you've taken on this task of writing a book. Where can people get hold of it, and how can they follow your progress?
Absolutely. So the book is available on Amazon. It's priced at $6.99 for the paperback version, and it's priced at $3.99 for the Kindle version. So if you just search The Robin Sings Again, or The Robin Sings Again, Hull KR, and you'll be able to find it. Does that come on the camera?
Yeah, we can see it. That is
great. So, yeah, I feel that it's a great read, not just for Hull KR fans, but for anybody who loves the underdog. And there's also the winds of change are blowing, I feel, as well. And I think it's going to be a real interesting read for the neutral because I've really planned it meticulously on how much I've gone into detail on things. And I think people will appreciate that when they read it. So, yes, I feel like it's a good stocking filler as well, especially for the KR fans out there. Yes.
And if you know any Hull FC fans, you can send it to them as well. Because every book sale counts.
Yes, and they might have relatives because that is often the case here with split families. I should know. I'm from one, so yes.
Brilliant. Dan, thank you very much for your time. Best of luck with the book. And I guess we'll speak to you next year and about the next book and about how 2022 has been an even better year for Hull KR.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Where do we start? Ben Baker, man of Keighley.
That's me.
I've had a look on Wikipedia. You're not on there as one of the famous people from Keighley, which, why haven't you edited that for a start?
No, Alistair Campbell.
Yep.
He's on there. Molly Sugden. Chewbacca lived here for a bit when, the career went a bit south. but then they made some new Star Wars films, and he was out of here as quick as possible. He couldn't wait to get out. Straight on that Millennium Falcon out.
Not that I'm bitter that I'm not on my school's Wikipedia alumni page, but no, I am. In fact, a very bitter person. But it shouldn't be bitter because it's Christmas. We can tell it's because we're both wearing Christmas jumpers. Right. I've got a Christmas tree box behind me.
I've got a Christmas box as well. We'll come back to that in a minute.
Frank Sidebottom's behind you as well, which is always great.
He is. He's always with me in spirit. You know he is. He really is. Thank you. And there's some books there. I just happen to have these books here. They do appear to be by me, but that's by the by. I tried to do the BBC News thing where someone's in front of a bookshelf, but I have 3 bookshelves in different corners, and I wasn't going to stick them together for the sake of this. So I think it's bad enough you have to see my face. So just try and look at the calming white around me and imagine Narnia.
It's more than fair. As someone who's tried to write a book about 1 million times since the age of 18. How do you do it? How do you write a book? You've got loads of it now.
You look at your bank balance and go, probably should do something soon. No, the thing about writing is, for me, like I've written a bunch of Christmas TV books. Which we're going to come on to the new one at the moment, but that's kind of easy because it offers the framework for you. For example, I wrote a book about Christmas TV in the 80s, so I went through all the 80s radio and TV times and pulled out all the sort of things that looked weird, interesting, try to find as much of it as possible to watch. So that kind of offered a framework to do that with. I think it's a lot more difficult if you don't have a target, I guess. And it does help as well if you set yourself a target of bringing it out for Christmas, because then you have to write it and bring it out for Christmas.
I mean, not only have I got your Christmas box, but I've got one of your quiz books as well, which are absolutely superb.
Oh, yeah.
And if anyone wants something to... Because Skype and Zoom quizzes, we've been doing them for 18 months now, and fast running out of ideas. And... so much so we've been playing old DVD games, which I've been buying from charity shops for 10p. So at least
telly addicts one and all that sort of thing.
Yes, they think it's all over with some very not quite on colour. Which I guess your book is full of these. This is Ben Baker's Christmas box. It is your latest 40 years of the best, worst, and weirdest Christmas TV. Join Ben Baker for a rustle through a selection box of star shows, cliches, and one-offs that made up the 20th century Christmas TV experience. And it goes on there and mentions lots of other things.
It does. And there's my face as well. It's just as proof, in case I don't take my passport anywhere, I could just say, look.
I mean, we are the same age. And I am a child who was obsessed with television, which I am assuming that you were as well.
Yeah, I think it's a generational thing, definitely. Because I've written books about specific eras of Christmas TV. And this one is a kind of bringing all them together in stories, sort of like looking at threads of various like genres and like stuff like why is Noel Edmonds so connected to the Christmas experience and stuff. And yeah, it does come from that very much telly was always on at Christmas sort of thing. And everyone's got that experience, I think. And if you don't, I'm really sad that you didn't have a red pen, a Radio Times, and you went to town on that. Even now, when there's 3.5 things to watch, in fact, most of it seems to be radio that I end up ringing these days because I am 40. But I love the fact that it's still a thing. Like, Christmas TV is still important in this country. Like, people still clamour to see what the schedule is. And then they invariably go, there's too many Shreks and Gruffalos, defund the BBC, set fire to the Big British Castle, all that sort of thing, But we still have that impetus, we still have that desire to actually sort of, to know what's there. It's comforting. And I think people go, oh, no, not X, Y, and Z again, But really, they are the building blocks of sort of a British Christmas TV and a British Christmas in general. Even now, it's like, I go to a friend's house for Christmas and their parents are there and they won't be watching BBC One or ITV. They'll be watching like Storage Wars or something. You know?
And we shouldn't fall into that trap of thinking that everything was great in the olden days and everything on TV today is rubbish, because there's a lot of rubbish on TV since, well, they invented the thing.
Well, yeah, and I've tried to do that with this book, basically, with sort of I'm looking down because it's there. It's like telly is always a weird thing at Christmas because, one, you get them kind of looser time slots and schedules and stuff, so everything's kind of a bit more mixed up, which obviously didn't used to be much of a thing when things started in like 1976 at 6:42 p.m. and stuff like that. But now, obviously, we're very used to regimented schedules and all that sort of thing, and also remit filling. Operas, all that kind of arts programming. They go, oh, got to fill it, but Christmas, put it all on Christmas. So you get some really weird stuff, and you get some absolutely atrocious stuff as well. And to be honest, I think telly's a lot more boring, but it's probably a lot more consistent.
Boring. That's a good. I mean, you say the best, worst, and weird. What's the weirdest thing then you've discovered in researching these books?
I mean, I certainly feel the Kid Creole and the Coconuts musical, There's Something Wrong in Paradise, takes a real beating. A 2-hour Hollywood-style blockbuster about racism on a small island, but done in a Granada studio. With Kid Creole and the Coconuts. I mean, that went out ITV, 10 p.m. on a Saturday night just before Christmas. And you just think, that's not happening now. No one's offering that slot to, I don't know, who is a pop star now? Sausage Rolls man. The Sausage Rolls fella. He's not getting his own 2-hour Christmas spectacular, is he?
I mean, it's quite a surprise, actually, because, he's very popular on the YouTube. Why is there not a Lad Baby Christmas? Have ITV not discovered him or something?
Because he doesn't need it. That's it. YouTube's going to offer him way more exposure now, I think, for the right audience, the audience that, he actually wants him. So why would he bother with TV? That's the whole thing. With this book, it's about the compromise of Christmas, I guess, because we're all it's one of the few times we do all get together still. And I think that's why last year, being sort of stuck on Zoom calls and everything like that, we realised kind of how nice it was, even though it's deeply, deeply irritating when, there's an elderly relative waffling through. Well, at least Doctor Who's not on Christmas Day now, because that was the worst one. But, it's kind of, that kind of experience where we're all together and you all kind of have to make a compromise of what to watch. And so invariably, it's the path of least resistance, I guess. It's like, well, the chase is on. We could watch the chase. Nobody dislikes the chase. And I think that's what ITV are thinking now, because basically, last couple of years, they've basically gone, hey, let's just do what we normally do. So, I mean, they showed Good Morning Britain this morning, Loose Women, same again this year. And then, basically, soaps, chase, tipping point, probably tenable. It's like, they don't bother. They're not bothered.
There's no Gordon Ramsay's Bank Balance Christmas special on BBC One, is there? I'm looking forward to that if there is.
You know what? I could imagine they've filmed that back in summer and then shot it into space just to make sure, on the off chance it never gets shown accidentally. You can add to that as well. Craig Charles has got a game show now on Channel 4 called, I think it's called Moneybags. And, you look at Craig Charles and you think, game show host, obviously. And so, that it's... television is still capable of being baffling, but...
What was that bloody awful virtual reality thing called that he presented? Remember the early days of
Cyberzone?
Cyberzone. You could not get a more early 90s name for a TV program.
No, basically virtual reality gladiators, I guess. That was kind of the general idea with that. Sort of before Robot Wars made it actually sort of tangible. I don't know if there ever was a Robot Wars Christmas special, but I hope there was, and I hope that they put little beards on to kill a lot. And
put some tinsel on Target Bash.
Yeah. Brilliant.
The problem with the chase is it's not a problem with the chase because the chase is great. Everyone loves the chase. The only difference between the chase Christmas celebrity special and normal chase Christmas celebrity non-Christmas celebrity special is that they'll get the vixen dressed up as a pantomime dame or something. Because there's so many celebrity specials throughout the year. I mean, I do like it when you stick challenge on randomly and it's a Family Fortunes Christmas special and they announce everyone's in panto at the end. They don't do that anymore. They don't say Sam from Sam and Mark's in Theatre or Wakefield.
No, they don't. And I think that must have been like an agreement with the like equity or something like that back then. But it was a nice sort of feeling of, you know, these people exist in the telly. It's like, I suppose that's another thing we've lost with like social media and everything. You can just go on and tell anybody you know if they're on Twitter how much you hate them. They will go, oh, blocked. But you can tell them that before people existed. Again, as you said, not a rose-tinted glasses things, but stars were stars. You know, in the sort of 70s, 80s, you know, you did have people like Brucey, Bob Monkhouse, Scylla, I suppose, you know. You know, you got all these people who everybody knew. And I don't know if everyone does know people now. I don't know.
No, I mean, although judging by, and I have no recollection of this whatsoever, so I'm going purely on the book here. Gladiators, celebrities versus jockeys. I have no recollection of this whatsoever.
Well, and that does feature Bradley Walsh. Because people forget Bradley Walsh has been kicking around for a long time. I think he did like Des O'Connor in like 87 or something. But yeah, that's a weird one because it's like celebrities versus jockeys. So if I was a jockey, I'd already be feeling pissed off that I'm apparently not a celebrity, you know. And you just get these. But I mean, the lineup on that one in particular, you've got like the late Mark Speight, who obviously a lot of people know from of a certain age from like Smart and stuff like that. But he was doing Scratchy and Co on ITV at the time, where he had kind of like a Max Headroom kind of thing with his like fake wig and stuff. And he sort of kept jumping between that character and being himself. And it's a strange thing. And Ulrika, it's 97, so it's just after Shooting Stars has really hit big. You know, it was one of the biggest things on telly at the time, and she could not give a damn about being there at all. She does not want to be there. And it's just after John Fashanu was done for the... Well, he ended up being innocent. Well, he was cleared of the match fixing thing that got Grobbelaar and all that sort of thing. But he's not on it as a result. So it's just this strange mix of things. And it sort of goes to prove that not every show was worthy of sticking the word Christmas in the title. You know, some things are just like, no, it's not. It's not. I'm glad they tried, but
it's now reminding me that Ice Warriors was a thing, and I don't think that got a Christmas special because no one remembers Ice Warriors at all. Which is
John Leslie, and he hosted it. So, you know, I wasn't just saying that because it was a random name.
Well,
no. Let's be honest. Let's not go there.
We need to reappraise a couple of people because social media. Well, I don't know if social media necessarily, but Lenny Henry has a reputation of not being funny, which obviously is not true. And the book has plenty of recollections of him being on telly as a Christmas star, starting ridiculously with the Black and White Minstrel Show.
Well, yeah, and if you read his fantastic autobiography, Who Am I Again, he talks in great detail about sort of his first, say, like 18, up to Bat Tiz was, really. And yeah, he gets sort of signed up by a well-meaning but wrong manager, because basically at that point, the Black and White Minstrel Show, for those who don't know, it was just a normal song and dance kind of variety show with blackface. And, you know, by sort of the late 70s when Lenny Henry joined, obviously it was definitely an anachronism. You know, this is an era of punk have happened and stuff, and not on telly particularly much, unless you're Bill Grundy, I guess. But he was added in to show, hey, we're not racist, here's a person of colour. And it's like, oh no. But then, yeah, I've done a whole chapter basically because he's on Christmas TV pretty much consistently up to the sort of mid-2000s when obviously he took a bit more of a break to do the acting thing, you know, and I think people forget that. And of course, unless you type in "I like Lenny Henry" on Twitter, then 1,000 people randomly, for no reason, decide to tell you how unfunny he is. And it's nothing to do with anything else. He's just unfunny. He's just an unfunny man, apparently.
Now, so where do we stand on Noel Edmonds then? Because he was, as you say, Mr. Christmas TV throughout the 80s, into the 90s. Telecom Tower, we're all big fans. All the keys, speaking of the crankies on a plane, all that kind of nonsense.
Yeah.
And now he's and now he is what he is. Unfortunately,
he is a lunatic, but he's a great telly host. I think again, it's like that. Can you listen to the Smiths, even though Morrissey is a horrendous person? Can you watch Telly Addicts, knowing that the host is a bit, thinks he can cure cancer with his mind? You know, I'm not sure, but you've got to admire, looking back, a lot of these are on YouTube now. Not all of them, but certainly I wrote a chapter about Noel Edmonds at Christmas because he's sort of there for Top of the Pops in the 70s, like he's usually the host of the Christmas Top of the Pops. And then he does a few other bits with Swap Shop. But then, as you say, up the Telecom Tower from 1984, they start doing these live spectaculars, doing OBs around the world. And they sort of, they slowly build them up. I think the 1985 one is the biggest because they not only did they launch Comic Relief on it, which nobody remembers that now, but you know, you've got like OBs all around. So they go to Africa to like launch Comic Relief and all that sort of thing. And you've got the Crankies and Gary Davies watching on in horror as Fergal Sharkey tries to mime "You Little Thief," on Concord, and it's a clip that's been pulled out a lot, but with very little context, you know. And that happened for a few years, and that was always an interesting thing. And it got a bit earlier because they decided to link up with Australia and other places, you know, show it live over there. So it was a really big deal. And then I would say there was a little bit of an incident that occurred in his career in 1986, where a man died, and not the Christmas show, but they still went ahead with it, you know. And you've got to imagine, like, that was like 5 weeks after as well, so that must have been insane. And yeah, then he does Noel's Christmas Presents for another decade, which was, you know, you kind of schmaltz, but well-meaning schmaltz. You know, unfortunately, Noel's Noel's family telly accidents. I can't remember it's actually what the quote is now. But from bottom, it's but it's Noel's Christmas video family accidents or whatever. Yeah. So there, Noel Edmonds. I don't know. I think if he was on this year at 11:30, probably not at the Telecom Tower. I don't know if they do that sort of thing anymore. The BT Tower now, as it is. You'd watch it, wouldn't you?
Yes, because you don't.
Because it's
something weird might happen. Someone from the bill might knock on the door or something. Or
yeah, it's the liveness of it. I think you're missing with a lot of Christmas TV. But then again, as I said, this morning will be on, so who knows? Maybe Mr. Blobby will turn up there.
Maybe Phil and Holly will turn up drunk or after. Oh no, it's not an awards thing. So I don't think I'll be watching.
What? No, that's just it. There's no, because it's just another edition of a thing that exists already. Whereas Christmas was a place where you got these once a year things. That's why the Morecambe and Wise Christmas shows are such a beloved thing, because eventually they were doing series, but eventually they kind of filtered out a bit because they wanted to focus in on the Christmas special, and they would be working on that for months and months and months, you know. And that's why they stand up so well, I think, you know. But
one of the things that has stood out in this, and it's something I have no recollection of whatsoever, which is bizarre because I was a big fan of them. Might be because of the time it was on. The Bewitched Christmas special. That was a huge Bewitched fan back in 1999, which I don't know many. My friend of mine definitely was. So there was two of us in Wake.
We were 18-year-old boys, so you know.
It's all right then, isn't it? Yeah.
Emotions, feelings.
I've got a Bewitched video somewhere on VHS, but I have no recollection of this program whatsoever. I think it's well, things. It's like what was it? Here. What was the Hearsay
Saturday?
That's the one.
Hearsay Saturday, yeah, where they try to go, hey, let's give them a variety show because they're very popular. And it turns out they weren't that popular at all, But yeah, the Bewitched thing sort of aired at like 9:25 a.m. So on like December 28th or something. I can't remember the exact date, but basically it was one of those filler things. And I added that in because I've done a section about pop music other than Top of the Pops at Christmas, because obviously there's a lot of music at Christmas. And that's kind of the end of it, really, because at 1999 is kind of where I end the book. Because I think things change after that. It's too hard to track and there's satellite and everything. And no one's having the same experience like they used to do. And the Bewitched special is weird because they were massive, weren't they? Obviously, they had 4 number ones in a very short space of time, like 9 months maybe, if that. And they went to America. Did you know they had a top 10 hit in America?
Well, was it Roller Coaster? Because
no, it was C'est La Vie.
C'est La Vie.
Although Roller Coaster is my favourite, personally.
I mean, my all-time favourite is Blame It on the Weatherman, because I think that's just an awesome song in and of itself. But I think there is video evidence somewhere of me and some friends doing the roller coaster dance somewhere. So I'm hoping that never. This isn't the days before camera phones, so it's probably on a VHS tape somewhere long lost.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. But that's a fascinating document in itself, because basically it's like Christmas, so they brought big mid 98. This is Christmas 99, and they are knackered. You can tell they have lost all love for the industry whatsoever. They've just been on a constant rotate because they were trying to break America, and they did sort of, but you think that they sort of come on the heels of the Spice Girls, who got basically Christmas 96 and Christmas 97. ITV show a Christmas, not a non-Christmas, a Spice Girls concert at Christmas, because why not? They're the biggest thing in the world, and you didn't get that for menswear, was a shame, which I would have liked that, I'll manage somehow with kids sat around, I would have loved that. It would have been great.
You mentioned obviously now satellite TV, cable, there's a Netflix around it. Whatever they put on, and obviously there will be people who just sit down and watch whatever's on BBC One on Christmas Day, which will get no doubt lots of views. But things have changed. We can remember the past, but it's not going to be the same going forward, is it? Because there are so many options
now. No. I still, obviously, I mean, you still get I think last year was it like 9 million was like the most watched thing, and that would have been, I think it was EastEnders. That sort of thing, and you've had Mrs. Brown's Boys and Call the Midwife and Strictly Come Dancing and that sort of thing. It's been a fairly consistent schedule the last decade or so, and people don't like that. But I think that's kind of what it should be, because Christmas Day is a day the telly's on, but you can't really concentrate on it unless you're on your own. So you do have an archetypal thing. There's going to be a Pixar on at 3:10. There's going to be a half-hour animated story about a piece of sentient mold called Flemp or something like that. It's like
is that by David Walliams or something? Yeah.
Probably, or Julia Donaldson. And then you'll get your Strictly, and you'll get sort of where you used to get Doctor Who. Now, I mean, it was the Wheel last year got a Christmas transfer, which was interesting, because I quite like the Wheel, even though Michael McIntyre, like most people, I'm like,
he's all right. He's
got good genes in him. I'll say that, considering his dad was, one of Kenny Everett, who is one of my heroes and up there somewhere, one of his main writers. But yeah, and ITV, as I said, have just pretty much opted out. They just
it's like when the World Cup's on, they just might as well we're just not going to bother. Although I am the person who will watch the Euro final on ITV, because I am just that way out. But
Really? Okay. I don't know. I don't know why it doesn't bother me at all either way. But I do know people very much. I've been told there are households of people who weren't allowed to watch ITV. It was common, but I'm very common. So, I'm from Keighley. Cougars. I'm in Cougar colours.
I can say, yes, it's very
quite
very
by chance.
Yeah.
If you ever want to talk about Nick Pinkney,
I'm surprised you're not.
I was there when we beat Batley in '93. Good Friday, pouring down the rain. Joe Grimmer sent off. I was there. I was there. You ever need any of that? Well, it was for Keighley, certainly.
until Bradford ripped you off, and
Bradford Northern.
Bradford Northern.
Yeah, they were not until we were Cougars, and then everyone did. It's true, to be fair. Cougars were the first kind of to have that kind of. And I think it was a competition in the Keighley News. Some kid came up with a name, and people really got behind them that season. Understandably, because we were very good. And then, very much like Ebenezer Scrooge, Maurice Lindsay came along.
What's it saying?
Ruined it.
Merry Christmas, everyone, to all except Maurice Lindsay. It says there in the book.
That's basically in case you're wondering why I'm on a rugby-based podcast.
that's the rugby part. Although I'm highly amused. Obviously, the kid who won the competition never knew that in 2021 or whenever, Keighley would have a women's team, which is now called the Keighley Cougars, which is brilliant because no one could have foreseen what the word cougar would have meant and how brilliant a name that is.
Well, yeah, I suppose it has it's a multifaceted kind of title, but I mean, we were so into it at the time. My dad actually got the Cougars a decal put on the side of the car saying Cougars with the logo, and he used to pick me up from school. And he's like, No, please don't, because I loved them. But I didn't want that, and we were friendly with some of them. And they'd come to school and they'd teach us like the basics, and we're okay at rugby because look at me, I'm a stocky kid, Well, if you can see, I am a stocky lad, and I was good at it, but I refused to take my glasses off, and apparently some of the players were very bemused because I could have played rugby, but I didn't because I didn't want to take my glasses off.
They've made some interesting backroom signings. They're on the way back up, the Cougars, and
they're always on the way back up.
Well, yeah.
That's the problem. The problem is ultimately we got rejected in the 90s because we didn't have a massive ground or anything. Because it's a big small town. There's a lot of people technically come under the sort of heading of Keighley. It's like over 600,000 sort of people, but. It's a nice sized ground for what it is, but it's never going to be Odsal or whatever. It's never going to be sort of unless someone basically comes along and one of those Saudi Arabian millionaires comes along and basically builds an entire new thing. Then no, and then people will still complain because it'd be too much and Bovril's too much, and it's just.
These Saudi Arabian oil billionaires, they haven't discovered rugby league yet. It's very sad.
No, it feels like it's the only thing they're missing, really. Like why buy Newcastle? It's like everyone knows about that. Come down to miners. We'll treat that money with. Can you imagine how far that money would go in the north? Oh, you can have gold, everything.
It'd save you a lot of money.
Possibly. Well, yeah. Weirdly, my mum does actually work at a petrol station across from Cougar Park. So, I'm sure they would just go in there and buy all of the petrol for everybody. and it'll just be like that bit in Zoolander where they're just having a fight with the petrol. It'd be fine.
See, the other Rugby League TV connection, which is something I've been looking for. It used to be on YouTube. Was when Harry Gratian left Luck North. Which again, this is for the Yorkshire-based listeners.
Oh yes,
the first time he left Luck North in the mid-90s, he did a couple of adverts for Northern Upholstery, as was DFS as is now. But and one of them was on YouTube. It's not there anymore. And he was mocked up in a studio presenting the news. On Northern Upholstery's latest, 3 years interest-free credit and free Parker. Oh, not Parker pen. That's Parkinson. But it's gone. It's gone.
I don't want you to get Barky confused with Harry Gratian. They're very, very different men.
Yeah, we're all big fans of Harry Gratian. That's the difference.
That is very true. That is very true. Yeah, no, he is. I think I just saw him on a stairlift advert on Talking Pictures TV. I'm sure he was doing.
I'm gonna have to watch. I mean, that is a great channel, and that is a great channel full of obscure stuff.
We all have that hovering channel where it's just like there's nothing on, so I'm just gonna have this on. A lot of people have Dave on, for example. Or Challenge. I have Talking Pictures TV because it's just always something old and quite comforting, and especially in the last 18 months, comfort has been. I mean, that's partly why I wrote sort of the last book I wrote was just about 90s Christmas TV, and I said I wasn't going to write that, and then 2020 happened, and I think just a lot of people went back to comfort. They just wanted when cinemas did open, there was it was all stuff like Hocus Pocus and Grease and Back to the Future, all sort of reissue stuff, the charts. I mean, look how many Christmas songs went back in the chart last year, and 2 songs that had never been number 1 before got Christmas number 1 finally. Wham and Mariah Carey, because people just wanted warmth. They wanted something that was from a time that wasn't this, the darkest timeline.
I feel a fraud because you've written 4 books. Here's one of them about Christmas TV. I write a column every month in 4020 magazine about TV, which is hard to do when I don't really want to talk about Rugby League on TV, because I've kind of set myself parameters in so much as I don't want to slag people off because I might meet them somewhere along the line, and B, I don't really want. I'm not really slagging them off for anything in particular, So it's hard to be critical in that way. But it's as opposed to we can have a go at Cilla Black because A, she's dead, and B, she's not going to read a Rugby League magazine. But
and also she was awful. So,
but
there are certain people you've not heard very good things about at all, and she's definitely one of them. Come back and haunt me if I'm wrong.
And she probably didn't like Rugby League anyway. But in the last issue, I wrote about Kenny Everett because he's been on That's TV Gold, which is another one of these random channels.
Yeah, I don't get that one. I'm really annoyed. Even though I've got the DVDs,
I still want to watch it on TV.
Just watch it. But it's like the fact that it's on. It's just on.
I mean, the point of my... I brought it into the column for Abe because I had nothing else better to write about because the season's finished now. And it does say at the start, this is presented in its original form, and some bits are of their time, which I think I'm glad they do it that way instead of butchering it to hell, because giving the audience some intelligence. Of course, there's some stuff you wouldn't want to repeat, from the past. That's fair enough, but I don't think there was anything necessarily on there that was too.
There's a few dodgy accents, and it's weird because people don't see him having a scantily clad dance troupe as much of a problem as Benny Hill because Kenny was gay, but I don't think anyone actually knows if Benny Hill was either. He was always a bachelor, and I don't think it shouldn't matter.
No.
You know what I mean? But it's weird how we have these. They're all right, they're not okay. It's like, if you ever want to love any 70s music ever, never look into what they did in the 70s. Led Zeppelin, dear Lord. Bowie, I love Bowie. Bowie is a hero of mine. Bowie did some terrible things. Never look up what these people did. Because, but it's weird, isn't it? Like, because there are quite a few disgraced celebrities in my book. You can't get around with it. There's lots of Rolf. There's lots of Now Then. I refuse to invoke his name.
I mean,
there's...
I love Steve Coogan, but I'm not going to watch that drama.
No, why does that exist? That shouldn't be a thing. He looks like Mr. Majika anyway in the pictures that have leaked. That's a proper deep cut reference for people of a certain age. But no, why? Don't do this.
I think one of the things
I'd rather see Dave Lee Travis play Macbeth.
I've got the Give Us a Break game somewhere. I think I need to dig that out for one of the Skype quizzes. The one thing that surprised me, and I guess this is because having been born in 1980, the end of the 70s is a kind of mystery, and it's kind of my view of it is coloured by things like, which coloured's probably the wrong word here, but things like Mind Your Language and Love Thy Neighbour and this and the other. But was how interracial some of the dance routines were. It wasn't made out to be. I think it's just, here are people dancing. Some of them are black, some of them are white, and some of them have very little clothes on, and it's on ITV. But you know, it was an interesting thing to watch as a historical document of things at the time.
Yeah.
And Barry Cryer looks exactly the same.
He does really very much. He's like, when he goes, it'll be more sad than when the Queen goes. I'm sorry if there are any royalists. It's not an anti-Queen thing. It's a pro-Barry Cryer thing. Because that man has just been there. It was like when Dennis Norden went. Dennis Norden had just been there forever, you know. And you just have to, respect those people who've just been the fundament, basically, on which everything else sort of, although that said, still don't want to watch David Walliams' version of it. It'll be all right on the night, because it's dreadful.
You've mentioned Benny Hill, and I need to mention this because I was going to do it anyway. And I've just watched it again now.
Oh dear God!
The Benny Hill
Spectrum game, is it?
It is.
Oh God!
because it's one of the first things of yours that I remember watching on the YouTube is you playing Benny Hill's Madcap Chase. I mean, how that?
Playing's a strong word.
I mean, I've actually seen somebody else play and get onto a second level, which is, you know, the
fact
that
refuse to believe that exists. I refuse. I refuse to believe that exists. Do you want to tell the people what the point of the game is?
Well, the first level, Benny Hill in Beret. Well, he's in Benny Hill. He's in Dirty Old Man.
Fred Scuttle.
You say that there were houses that didn't watch ITV. Benny Hill was not a program we'd have watched in a very progressive socialist household, unfortunately. So
I don't really remember watching it much. Obviously, it was on for quite a long period of time, and then Freddie Starr basically did a series of scripts that had been written for Benny Hill. And you know what's really interesting about that? Why I bring that up? Because Freddie Starr rang us up at 3 a.m. in about 1990. Swear this is true. My uncle had gone to see him at Blackpool, got very drunk with him, and then basically said, "Oh, you should get my nephew on. You know, he's because my dad was trying to be a comedy writer and stuff like that. So he sent a load of jokes. He never heard anything. Then that series came out, and my dad said, "That was my joke. That was my joke. That was my joke." So you know, there are certain things. And Benny Hill just it's bad. It's bad memories. Just if he hadn't have gone, who knows? You know, of course, what the most interesting Benny Hill story is?
Go on.
It's the tribute he paid to Frankie Howard when Frankie Howard died, even though he was already dead, because his agent couldn't get hold of him. So he decided. I think it was that way around. Certainly, they both died about the same time. And I'm fairly sure Frankie went first and Benny's agent couldn't get hold of him, so he went, "Oh, we'll miss him greatly. He was a gentleman of the old school," sort of thing, all that kind of business. And yeah, he was already dead. So, yeah. And if he had played Benny Hill's Madcap Chase in his last moments...
you have to go around taking your neighbour's washing and stealing it.
Yes.
Basically. Yeah. And get points. It's a very odd.
You're helping one neighbour, but another neighbour thinks you're just a dirty old man stealing knickers and bras from the washing line, because it was the 80s and they made a video game out of anything.
What I mean, they made it, as you say, they made it out of what program today would you like to see a video game of? Not Call the Midwife. That would not be a good idea. And I'm surprised no one had Newsnight again.
I don't know, because you do get those really dreadful kind of like ITV keep advertising, "Oh, you can play, you know, lottery, jackpot, slot machine versions of all of our programs."
Yeah.
It's like, that's not really what I want to do. I mean, I spent many an hour playing the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire sort of trivia quiz games in pubs, you know, over the years. And I did. And also there's, going back to Noel, Deal or No Deal one seems to be in every Wetherspoons. Seems to be a Deal or No Deal. Even though it's not been on television for 5 years, it's like there's always a grinning Noel beckoning you in to waste your money on... I don't even know how they work now. it's just like it's all newfangled. It's
all
all
new.
too fiddly for me. I'm 40 years old. You see, it's too fiddly.
No.
They should bring back, them knockoff Space Invaders. That you had to put up. The Toby, was it Tobytronic? The ones.
Yes.
That
Yes.
It was like, and the buttons are at the top. You see,
I
they wouldn't know. They don't understand out.
I've got so desperate for watching stuff that I managed to start watching Taggart from the start, and then the pilot episode, he's in the pub, which is a very 1980s looking pub because it is playing Pac-Man, actual Pac-Man.
Wow,
the character of Taggart is addicted to Pac-Man, which is something you'd not expect, but it happened.
That's pretty good because I did the BritBox trial this year because there's always a trial. They're very thirsty. They are. It's basically you take a trial and then you say, thank you, I don't want it anymore. And they say, oh, we'll have this deal. And they say, oh, have this deal. Oh, okay, have it for basically you can come round our house and make love to our wives, and as long as you've got a subscriber number. And I think by then, I've watched a few bits on that, but it became basically a Minder delivery system because I just watched loads of Minder on it. It's like 4 series of Minder in a month.
The Minder game was written by the same bloke who wrote Benny Hill's Madcap Chase. And the Minder game is brilliant.
Electronics?
Yeah, the Minder game is.
Yeah, it shouldn't work at all, because it's kind of an adventure game, I guess, isn't it, really? You sort of have to sort of make deals and that sort of thing. Yeah.
It's a strange one.
Definitely.
I'm trying to think of anything else to ask about Christmas TV, but I think we've covered almost pretty much everything. Apart from if you could watch one thing from the past, which you've written about, which there's no evidence of any shred of video to be found in a Nigerian TV station's cupboard with these episodes of Doctor Who, what would it be that you would really like to see?
No. You know what? There's not a lot that isn't out there now in some way or other. It's like I would love more of the not only but also stuff, and also Alan Bennett's On the Margin just needs to. I think they did find some copies of that, but basically it's stuff like that. There's a lot of 60s comedy definitely that just seems to have completely vanished. In terms of Christmas stuff specifically, it's weird because all these things that used to be just verboten around. So, example, in the book, there's a chapter about the Queen's speech, kind of just a rough history of interesting things that happened at different years. And she only didn't do one for 2 years. Once when she was very, very pregnant, and once when they did this documentary, Royal Family, which was a huge deal. It got 30 million because it was on BBC and ITV, and it was basically about following. It was a very, very close fly-on-the-wall documentary about them following up Charles's investiture as Prince of Wales. And she decided they'd been on telly too much that year. So they did, and didn't do a speech. And we move on sort of through the years, and it was shown a few more times, and then it was banned. It's basically, you cannot see this anymore. And it was literally, if any trace of this found out, it would be probably not praise, but certainly a very large smack on the wrist. And that leaked this year in full, Royal Family. And it's like, I never thought I'd see that. Like Hardwick House, not festive, but I never thought I'd see these things. And suddenly they're there. And it's like, not much of it lives up to what you imagined. There's a lot of like players and stuff you look at and go, that sounds fascinating or awful. I can't decide what, but no one's recorded it, so.
The pilot episode of Countdown, that's the one with the 45-second clock. That's that's the kind of thing people.
Was there not two? I think there was two.
I think there are two. Pilots. There are two Countdown pilots. Yeah, the one with 45 seconds and the very space-looking calendar countdown font, which again going down a proper wormhole here. Which
well, if there's anything which is the Christmas period to me, and I've done this many, many times, and it'll either get a reaction or the blankest look of anything that I've ever said throughout this time, or indeed the last 40 years. Call YTV's Christmas line on Leeds 448
Yes.
It's in there. It's like 08181188181. It's like certain jingles never leave. And if you're from our neck of the woods, that was on all over Christmas. It was like, if you need a plumber over Christmas, bring this number and we'll sort you out, basically. And to me, that's Christmas. That's Christmas.
That's perfect, isn't it? That's a perfect place to finish. The book is Ben Baker's Christmas box. It is here. Look, you can get a shiny. Where can we get a shiny copy from?
I should pass it over to you.
Oh, yeah.
Go have that copy. Yeah, it's good. You can go find me on Twitter at Ben Baker Books is probably the easiest way, and I've got a link tree, and basically you can buy it from Amazon and Kindle, or you can buy it from Lulu, who I do it through, or you can buy it from me, and I will send you a copy signed personally as you have proved, and you'll even get some fancy bookmarks and stuff, and some audio extras and bits and bobs. And I do this all myself. This cover took forever to do. Like, I don't have anyone designing stuff for me, so I had to make this and then make sure it worked, and then make sure the spine fit, and then make sure the back worked. And, you know, it's a constant pain in areas which I won't mention at Christmas, but and then you've got to go through and go, oh, is the formatting right? You know, it's like if you've got one word on one page, that sort of thing. It's self-publishing is such a joy, but actually when you get back a box of your books and stuff and you see that thing and it's like an actual tangible thing and stuff, and people are talking about it and reading it and stuff, you do get a nice feeling. And it won't sell as many copies as Josh Widdicombe's I Remember an Episode of Neighbours from 1992, which a lot of people pointed out, oh, he's done a book just like you. I'm like, he hasn't. He's a famous person, and he's written about things he likes, and so have I. Because my books are written in my voice, you know. It's like, I think my favourite entry out of any of them is a programme called Jim Davidson's Special, and my entire entry is, no, he isn't.
You know, I mean, here's the bizarre thing, and I know we stopped and we're starting again, but here's the bizarre thing. Jim Davidson, everyone knew what Jim Davidson was and is, and he hosted a generation game in the 90s. It's like we had a collective amnesia for a bit and forgot.
It was a big break, wasn't it? Big break was massive. You know, Big Break changed his career, basically. Yeah, but it's absolutely baffling. And I've only been to one pantomime ever, and he was in it. Him and Charlie Drake doing Cinderella, not Cinderella with an S. Which,
the proper one.
Kids of the 90s will remember he did a naughty, sexy version of Cinderella, which just don't. It's probably on YouTube. Just don't. And because I'm nice, I'm not even going to tell you what Mike Reed's copycat version was. Although cat is very implied in Boots. So, yeah. Christmas!
Buy the book. It's Ben Baker's Christmas box. At Ben Baker Books on the Twitter. Ben, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for joining us. I always enjoy waffling.
Yeah, I got to say, we talked for a bit longer than I thought we would do, which is always good because, you know, the people, they love a long podcast to listen to while they're, you know, working at home and not doing anything these days. So it's all good.
I wish every single person listening a very Merry Christmas, except Maurice Lindsay, obviously. You know why.